First I will tell you that we're so proud of our fellow Texans for stepping up and offering things such as PPE, whether it be masks, whether it be gloves, whether it be gowns, or whatever the case may be. Also, I'm proud that a team that's working with Chief Dem Kidd has been doing a terrific job to access all channels to increase our supply of PPE and other items. And I'll let Chief Dem Kidd explain more about that.
Thank you, Governor. And we're hearing the same thing. It's a very valid question. There's no secret that the supply chain has taken quite a shock. But what we also, when the governor's been talking to hospital CEOs, they're on a rationing program right now so that they don't completely run out. Where in normal days it might be one mask to one provider for each patient, CDC guidelines and the things that we're asking all of our responders and healthcare workers to do is to the best as possible try to use one mask for one provider per one shift. Now if the mask gets compromised or gets wet, we want to change that out. I can tell you on the front end, how we use it will help determine how much we have. On the back end, our team is working very hard at an international level to find the right personal protective equipment that's going to come in and be distributed in a very rational and bed count and population driven manner. We want the most need going to where the resource is needed so that we don't have any waste at this critical point in time and make sure that we don't have any shortages either. So we're working very hard around the clock to make that happen.
I'll add also that the governors have once or twice a week conference calls with the president, the vice president, Dr. Birx, sometimes Dr. Fauci, who was on the phone call yesterday. And the point was made yesterday by both the president and the vice president about the additional investments made for additional supplies that are coming. And so they at the federal level, are constantly working on increasing the supplies, and we're anticipating far greater supplies coming forward, just like what we've seen with regard to the massive percentage increase in the number of tests that have been administered. So this executive order has some specific paragraphs. I'm talking about what it does and what it does not do to override local ordinances or county rules. To the extent that any county or local jurisdiction has any rule that's inconsistent with this executive order, it is overridden in this executive order. And so to the extent, for example, that religious services are permitted as specified in this executive order, they cannot be denied by a local ordinance or local order. However, to the extent that there are things that are not mentioned in this executive order, it still gives local jurisdictions the latitude to establish their own rules. Yeah, to the extent that it's not overridden by this executive order, local jurisdictions do still have the flexibility to impose standards that they may consider to be more strict.
Reports today say that the CDC is considering telling the public to wear face coverings. Is that under consideration in Texas?
Would you repeat the first part of the question again?
Yeah. So the CDC is now considering telling the public to wear face coverings, like masks, things like that. Is that something that's under consideration in Texas?
So what I will consider is any order or any type of item that is offered up by the CDC as a possible standard to consider will be something we will consider. My prior executive order was based upon CDC-based standards. This current executive order is largely based upon CDC standards as well as some other federal standards. And we want to stay connected to the standards that are established by the federal government. And we will look into any standards that are established by the CDC for consideration.
There have been reports that some local officials have not received the same data the state has up to hospital capacity and things like that, in addition to local requirements that to have that reported to them locally on a daily basis. Is there plans to include that data of hospital capacity that the state's able to share that with local officials to collaborate on that response for healthcare facilities locally?
We want to achieve the highest level possible of collaboration and sharing of information, and we know that's a two-way street. And so we've been mandated or required by the federal government to impose information gathering standards for the local governments to provide certain information to the state health services for us to be able to in turn provide to the CDC. On top of that, I could understand what I'm hearing from you. There may be needs or desires from local governments to get access to certain information that we have. To the extent that's possible, to the extent we can create information channels to accomplish that goal, I think we should do it. And so one thing that all of us do, it could be Dr. Hellerstedt, it could be Nim Kidd, it could be Mike Morath, or it could be any of us. We are constantly visiting with local officials to try to provide them either the resources that they need or the information they need. And we want to maximize that to the extent possible.
With these executive order now saying school closures through early May, does that also apply to your restrictions on the restaurants? Will those also all be fixed?
Absolutely. So, contained in this executive order is the extension of the prohibitions of certain types of businesses from operating altogether. Bars and restaurants, however, I want to clarify, we strongly encourage people to utilize restaurants for food, whether it be for pickup or delivery or otherwise. And then we have also outlined some additional businesses in here to make sure that everyone understands they're closed. I'll list what it says here, and that is that people shall avoid eating or drinking at bars, restaurants, and food courts, or visiting gyms, massage establishments, tattoo studios, piercing studios, or cosmetology salons. Provided, however, that the use of drive-through pickup or delivery options for food and drink is allowed and highly encouraged throughout the limited duration of this executive order. Right. First, I will tell you, as we also list in here, we emphasize the importance of making sure whether they be state-supported living facilities or senior living facilities, and we have several different categories in here. I would categorize that as a top priority. Obviously, they often involve what are categorized as vulnerable populations, and so we want to elevate our surveillance and our assessment of those populations, as well as our protection of those populations, which is why in this order there are strict limitations on who can and cannot gain access to those facilities. But also, as you may have observed, we have increased testing at some of these facilities, and we look to continue that because of the vulnerability. And so we want to do all we can to protect all lives in Texas, especially those that fall into the categories that you mentioned who are the most vulnerable. I know many of you are seeking unemployment and unemployment insurance claims that you want to get filed, and know that we are adding people by the hundreds to help you respond to those claims. We are dealing with truly an unprecedented number of people who are applying for unemployment insurance. The good news is the money is there. The federal government has done a fabulous job of making sure that the funding will be available for those who are experiencing unemployment at this time. So just know that you're not going to be denied your claim simply because you're having a hard time getting through. But know this, and that is we understand your need and your need for speed. As a result, we have both hired more people on a temporary basis to help respond to these claims, as well as bringing in current employees from other agencies or other employment status to help out in this crunch time, to accelerate the timetable of response to help you get your claim. So I will always remain flexible on whatever standard is going to be best for the people of all 254 counties in the state of Texas. And those decisions will always be based in part on what Dr. Hellerstedt says, in part on what NIMKID says, in part upon what our federal advisors and counterparts say, whether it be the CDC or Dr. Birx, Dr. Fauci, and the president. All of them have, and the vice president obviously also. So all of them together provide information about what the appropriate standards are, and we look to them for that advice, and we base our decisions on input from them. Thank you all.
All right, you were just listening to Texas Governor Greg Abbott and others talking about a new executive order that extends through the month of April that asks all Texans, all residents and people in the state of Texas to avoid any activity that could contribute to the spread of COVID-19. Now, he did not go as far as calling it a stay-at-home strategy. In fact, he said that that's not really the right term for what he's asking. He's not saying that you can't go out to take part in activities that he listed, such as jogging, hunting, fishing, going to the grocery store, also going to the gym or going to a salon. So while he supports people heading out for those activities, at this time he is not encouraging people to go to the gym or to attend any other activities that would be large groups. He is asking everyone to follow CDC guidelines when it comes to activities, group activities, distancing with one another. Again, not calling this a stay-at-home order, but he is saying that we're going to ask everyone to continue to distance, no gyms, no salons, and that he is empowering law enforcement by placing this order that they can fine, jail, or force you into quarantine if they find that you were in obvious violation of this. So not just here in Harris County and our neighboring counties, but the entire state of Texas now in this position. So locally, you could see rules get stricter than that, but it's statewide. And we're going to hear from local authorities coming up at about 3 o'clock. We're expecting a press conference from Harris County and City of Houston officials. So we'll bring that to you live. In the meantime, we'll head you back to regular programming.